Peace. My name is Khalik Allah. I'm a filmmaker, I'm a photographer, and I'm exhibiting some work at La Chambre in Strasbourg. It all started just as a child with a love for photography and really for filmmaking. I began as a filmmaker and then I evolved later into a photographer. And photography really informed and inspired my filmmaking technique. So movies like Field Niggas and Black Mother, those are films that came after I became a photographer. So they're like photographer style documentaries. But with my career, I basically did it my way. I wasn't underneath anybody. I studied, I'm self-taught. And I just developed the style through trial and error. I'm just an unlimited thinker. I'm just an unlimited abstract artist. So I don't know if I really belong to any movement, but the streets raised me. Like there's a group called Mobb Deep from Queens, and they got a song called The Streets Raised Me. And that's how I grew up, you know what I'm saying? Just learning from older brothers in the street, getting the knowledge and the wisdom from people who had more experience than me. So my photography is really an extension of that, the street knowledge. I grew up around a lot of scientists, not people that were working in laboratories, but, street scholars or brothers that were just very intelligent, but that lived on the street. Many of them were 5%ers, something referred to as the nation of gods and earths. And they became my educators. So, my film technique and my photography technique really emerged from documenting that and infusing my work with science and math and spirituality. So yeah, that I don't know where it fits in the catalog of photography, but it's different. You know what I'm saying? Filmmaking and photography, those are new art forms. When we think about dancing and we think about painting and theater, these are art forms that are thousands of years old. But the camera hasn't even existed for 300 years. So I still feel like I'm at the beginning of this thing that we call photography, and there's a lot of room for innovation. So I'm trying to experiment and innovate and do different things. Some people wanted me to go to war and be a war photographer and shoot what's happening in Ukraine and different places. And some people said, change your subject matter, go film something different. But this is something that comes from my heart. It's not really a cerebral, mental type of thing. Of course, the mind is involved in everything, but this work really comes from the chest. So it'll fit into different places, and some places it'll be excluded, but it's just love, really, and love is limitless. With these portraits here, I engaged with the people that I photographed, so there was a lot of communication, a lot of conversations, and I would always ask for permission. And the main thing was just being a listener, listening and observing, and most of all, respecting. And showing that respect, in turn, they gave me respect and they allowed me in. So then they would speak to me sometimes for half an hour, even before I pressed the shutter, and I would get to know them more. And all of that built trust. And of course, there were many people who I wanted to photograph who they weren't with it, and they were like, nah, please don't photograph me, or I don't want to participate. So when that happened, I just respected it and just moved on to the next person. But it's something that I recognize in a person which draws me to them. It could be a glance or the way they look, or some sort of intensity or some sort of energy that resonates with me. And I'm just very respectful in my approach, and I try to introduce myself and say I'm a filmmaker, I'm a photographer, and your story is important to me. Capturing a photograph of you is creating a time capsule of this neighborhood. And in the future, with everything happening, like ideas of gentrification and all these different things happening, this corner is transforming into something that it hasn't been. So I feel like their stories are very important, and this is what I tell them. Like, I'm here to listen, I'm here to observe, and I'm here to document you. And usually they agree, because they can understand it's coming from an honest place, and they say, okay, this kid is real. Let him take my portrait, Some of the people in my photography became really close, like a man named Frenchie. He's somebody who's like the main character in my work. You know, he's in a lot of these pictures. It's just somebody who was very magnetic and welcoming. You know, he always liked to be photographed. He liked me to document him, and he was also full of energy. And this man was, you know, considered a drug addict, you know, or considered at the lowest level of society. But when I looked at him, I saw God. It's like I was speaking to God, you know. This area that I document, you know, they've now built condominiums and tall apartment buildings on that corner, which were never there before. There was a pathmark that I always used to photograph in front of, and that's closed down, and now they got buildings going up for like college students. So, you know, it's about the money really, and it's about, you know, creating affordable housing for people who could afford it, but not for the people who are even from Harlem. So now you got a lot of college students and people coming from downtown and people that are not even from New York moving into those areas. And people like Frenchie and people like the subjects of my work, they're being pushed up into the Bronx or being pushed out into Brooklyn or somewhere else. So the area is changing a lot, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I feel like I created a time capsule, you know? In America, it's either you have money or you don't. And if you don't have money, it's such a capitalistic society that a lot of people don't care about people who are living on the street or things like that. So, you know, and then when the pandemic came in 2020, it just got worse and crime went up. But at the same time, it's my city and I love my city, you know, and I love the people who I photograph and all of the people who I've been able to interact with. I'm using a Nikon F2 camera, a 35mm film camera, and I'm using a type of film which is actually meant for daylight. It's called Portrait 160. It's a slower speed film, but because of the fast lens that I use a 55mm 1.2 aperture lens, so that allows a lot of light to come in, you know. Well, the film is actually struggling, you know, just like people in the neighborhood are struggling. The film itself is struggling to create an exposure with such low light. Sometimes I'll find a person and it'll be too dark, so I'll say, can you walk with me into the light? And thinking about that statement, I was like, damn, walk with me into the light. That's like a religious statement, you know? So that's when I began to call this camera ministry, you know what I'm saying? Because really photography is not so important to me. You know, photography actually could be very boring, but I have a reason to do it. You know what I'm saying? When I pick up the camera, it's not even just about the pictures. It's about the experience that occurs interacting with people that I photograph. So it's about trust, essentially. And the light sources over there, I've become to know them. You know, there's a pizza shop with glass, you know, with windows, and there's light coming out of that. And sometimes I'll tell people like stand in front of there. But once I tell them to stand, I don't tell them how to stand. People have different poses, and I give them space to bring their own personality into the photographs. So it's not so much of a direction that I give to them. But it's a struggle as well because, you know, I'm not using a lot of light. I never use a flash. I think a flash would be a little bit too aggressive. And draw too much attention. And when I'm photographing, I like to be below the radar. I like to be low key and kind of quiet with it, you know what I'm saying? As you said, I've been doing it for over 10 years now, and I've never got into a fight, never had my camera stolen. Nothing bad has happened, but I also feel it's because there's never been a time that I went out to the streets without praying first. There's always a prayer involved in my work. Both for myself and for the streets and for the people I'm documenting. I just kind of depended on other people to help me choose, you know what I'm saying? There was a woman named Ines from Portugal where this show was at before coming here to Strasbourg. And I may have given Ines something like 100 photographs. And I said, okay, it's your job now. You kind of decide what you want to use. Because I love all of them, you know what I'm saying? They're all an expression that, you know, it wasn't easy making this work, so it's really difficult to decide what to use, what not to use. And also, when you're so close to your own work, sometimes you need other eyes to help you. So, you know, she came back with maybe 40 images, And some of them I said, oh, you cut out some of the stronger ones, put those back. So then it became more of a collaboration. And then when Catherine invited me to come here, I also just gave Catherine the space to decide about the placement and where things would go, and how we would deliver this in the exhibition. And I really just trust people. You know, I believe that it's a collaboration with everybody I work with. You know what I'm saying? The people that I photograph, and then later on the people that are like the curators who exhibit my work. This is their profession, so I just trust them, and they did a good job. I really like this. This is actually my favorite exhibition. I've had shows in Paris, I've had shows in Dubai, and across America, but this is my favorite here in Strasbourg. So Strasbourg, if you're listening, I'm coming back. I may have to move here. I really like it here, actually.